My wife Gila and I grew up in Israel, and both of us served in the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF. I was in active duty during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, and immediately thereafter, I got married, and I enrolled in the Technion, the Israeli Institute of Technology, graduating in 1978. We came here to the United States in 1981 with two young daughters, Merav and Liron, for about 2 years just to pursue higher education. After graduating with an MBA from USC, we decided to stay just a bit more so that I can recuperate the cost of the tuition and living, and we were going straight back to Israel. I started working in commercial real estate in California, and months of staying here turned into years, and years turned into decades. And January this year, we noted that it's been 32 years that we have been living in the United States. Today, we feel comfortable enough to define ourselves as Israeli Americans, which by definition is American citizens of Israeli descent. Like many other Israeli Americans, we hold two passports, American and Israeli. As a member of the growing Israeli American population, I would like to speak today about how we got involved in the Israeli American activism and became a major supporter of AIPAC. So basically, it's a personal story. When we came here, we sent our two young daughters to a Jewish day school in Los Angeles, but when it came time to attend high school, they asked our permission to attend a respected and well-known private school where most of their Jewish friends were going to. We, their Israeli parents, didn't have any problem with our kid going to non-Jewish private school because we were completely ignorant as to the challenges of Israelis living in the diaspora, including the importance of connecting with Jewish life and Jewish education. In Israel, most kids go to public Jewish day school that teach them about our Bible and history. They celebrate the Jewish holidays in school, with the family, and in public. And no one has to be a member in order to go to a synagogue. Well, as you probably know from your personal experience, Jewish life in the diaspora is not automatic, and it's kind of expensive. But it's definitely worth it. Let me tell you about my personal experience. After 2 years of our daughters attending high school, we were presented with a new reality. Many of their friends were non-Jewish, and they started dating non-Jewish boys. This was crossing a red line for us, and I wasn't sure that I will be able to reverse it. We asked our daughters to date only Jewish boys, and for sure, we insisted they don't even dream about marrying non-Jews. In return, they asked us, well, what is the significance of being a Jew, and why should we marry a Jew? After all, they said we, and justifiably so, mostly my wife was more observant, I did not belong to any Jewish temple, and we didn't really live a Jewish life. Going to Israel over the summer for family vacation didn't make them more Israeli or more Jews, they said. For them, the Israeli vacation were spending time with family and relatives and friends, but it would have been the same if they went to Hawaii or Italy. They didn't really get connected because they went to vacation in Israel. At that point, I realized the only way maybe to correct my ignorance and mistake as an Israeli father was to get closer to Jewish life and demonstrate to my daughter I was proud of my Jewish heritage and that our future as a Jewish family was of extreme importance to me. I got closer to Jewish life through Esh HaTorah, a Zionist pro-Israel Jewish outreach organization, which the executive director is here. It's Aryeh Markman. Aryeh, you're here? Aryeh Markman. Aryeh put me together to start learning weekly with Dov Eller, one of their Los Angeles rabbis, and we still do it until today. And our family started attending Esh events and high holiday services. It was at an Esh event that we got introduced to AIPAC and received a better understanding of how important AIPAC really was. Gila and I, like many other Israelis, we heard about AIPAC before, but we had no idea how big, influential, and vital AIPAC was in strengthening the state of Israel and its ties with the United States. Our initial support and dedication to AIPAC was really a no-brainer. We strongly felt, as American citizens of Israeli descent who served in the IDF, we must find a way to continue our Miluim service, the mandatory IDF duty, through activism in a strong organization like AIPAC. Within a few years, we upgraded our membership from the basic level of 1,500 of the Washington Club to the 3,600 of the Capitol Club to 10,000, which is the Senate Club, to 25,000, which is the President Cabinet, and then we quickly arrived at the 100,000 level of the Minyan. It used to be 10, but now it's in the 150. When we reached the Minyan level, we were very proud to see that it was already populated by several Israeli-American leaders, such as Amnon Rodan here, and Isaac Sheffer, which is also, I believe, in the crowd. Isaac? Here. Okay. Well, we need to recognize the great leaders that we have. Once we reached the Minyan level, we felt we have reached the highest level of support for AIPAC, and there is nothing we could do more. Well, that changed in 2005 when we sent our two older daughters to the policy conference. Liron, our second daughter, happened to find an empty seat just by mistake at the gala dinner adjacent to a guy named Sasha Strauss. He was living in our neighborhood of Los Feliz in Los Angeles. They both went to USC, but they have never met before. A year later, just before the next policy conference, Liron and Sasha got engaged. Well, that's just the beginning, just the beginning. When the local AIPAC staff heard about it, I wasn't surprised when they approached me to ask for the customary shidduch fee. Yes. I mean, the man is here in the crowd, at least he was here. I still remember a 2006 policy conference, Elliot Brandt, the regional Western director of AIPAC. Is he here or he left? He left. He was charging toward me with excitement, knocking on his BlackBerry, and he says, Adam, I just heard the news about Liron getting engaged. You owe us big. What are you going to do for AIPAC? I mean, that was his words. Well, I told Elliot it was not frightening me and that our family would be happy to increase our support for AIPAC if we were presented with the right program. Elliot put us in touch with the AIPAC senior management to discuss new potential program we could support. And following this year, Gila and I started funding an amazing program called AIPAC Campus Allies Mission to Israel, which enables about 50 non-Jewish students to go to Israel every year and see our homeland for themselves and appreciate the challenges facing the Israel that we know today. I see that Ambassador Ron Prostor is here. Ron, would you like to take a central spot here? We would like to ask you a question in a few minutes. You okay? The Campus Allies mission to Israel is only open to those who have not been to Israel and are not eligible for birthright. It's designed for pro-Israel political activists and student leaders who are non-Jewish. Today, Gila and I are not only funding the annual budget of the Campus Allies mission to Israel, but we have also established a pledge that will ensure the program funding in perpetuity. Several years ago, we started funding a second program called AIPAC Campus Allies Mission to the Policy Conference, which enables about 150 non-Jewish students from states such as, you never heard about Oklahoma, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, but those states produce 2 senators and many congressmen. And we have enabled those students, those civic leaders, to come to Washington, D.C. each year for the AIPAC Policy Conference. Here again, a bit later, we established another pledge that will ensure this program as well in perpetuity. Being very active in AIPAC is vital, but it wasn't enough for Gila and me. Today, we're very involved in some other important Jewish organizations and programs such as the Israeli-American Council of Los Angeles, formerly known as the ILC, which is galvanizing the Israeli-American community in Los Angeles, Sifriyat Pijama Be'America, which provides free children Hebrew books on a monthly basis to 7,000 families nationwide, which is about probably 30,000, 40,000 Israelis. Stand with us. Birthright Taglit Israel, Project Interchange of the American Jewish Committee, the Hillel Israeli Fellow Programs. Yeah, many of them are here. The Israel on Campus Coalition, Asbara Fellowship, which a lot of them are here, and many more. We live in Encino in the Los Angeles area, and yes, our older 2 daughters are now married to 2 good Jewish men. I know. And we have 3 good Jewish grandkids. What puzzled Gila and I the most, as Americans of Israeli descent, deeply caring about the security of Israel, that notwithstanding the tremendous growth of the population of Israel American over the last 30 years to hundreds of thousands, that a majority of them is completely unaware of AIPAC, and only few of them are active in the organization. You are excluded, of course. Living in Los Angeles, I have the pleasure of rubbing shoulders from time to time with smart Israeli-American leaders and visionaries such as Chaim Saban. And Chaim routinely speaks about the 2 national guardians of the state of Israel. One of them, of course, is the Israeli Defense Forces, which many of its amazing missions and accomplishments are confidential. And the second one is the United States of America. The state of Israel faces many existential threats, and without the strong support of this country, Israel's future is uncertain. Let me give you some example how vital AIPAC is for the future of Israel. AIPAC keeps Israel secure by working with Congress to ensure that we are able to defend ourselves. We know that Israel gets $3 billion in critical security assistance every year. This support is not automatic and not guaranteed, and AIPAC is working day and night to ensure it will continue. AIPAC helped achieving the passage of more than a dozen bills and resolutions imposing tough sanctions of Iran during the last 15 years. AIPAC is helping to defend Israeli citizens from terrorist missiles by enhancing U.S.-Israel defense cooperation through securing hundreds of millions of dollars each year for key Israel defense programs, including the best combat airplanes in the world, Aero missile defense system, and Iron Dome rocket defense system. AIPAC is also ensuring Israel's right to self-defense. The delegitimation of Israel and its right to self-defense is constantly in question, and the Ambassador Ron Prosor feels it every day in the UN. Congressional resolutions, letter, and statement of support for Israel defensive action in face of terrorism groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah have helped send a strong message to the Jewish state adversaries. I'm almost finished. Let me mention off the record that at times, not all the time, but at times, that the executive branch of our administration is not a big fan of Israel. It is the legislative branch, the Congress, who is able to balance the administration. This is one of the reasons AIPAC work with Congress is so crucial. There is no question that work of many Jewish organizations dealing with education, public relations, health, social justice, and so on, very important, and we are involved in it. But the national security of Israel is the most important issue for us. And it makes AIPAC an organization we must get involved in, and we must support it big time. I appreciate and respect the Israeli American already present here at the room. You clearly know the importance of AIPAC, and you've made a huge commitment to attend the policy conference. To the ones that are not fully aware, supporting AIPAC can be a club membership that is being upgraded over time to your highest ability. We can bring AIPAC into our communities by attending AIPAC local events and volunteering to hold own parlor meetings. We can continue to attend policy conference and the summit this year in Napa and bring our circle of friends with us. Another effective way to strengthen the state of Israel is to connect and raise funds for politicians nationwide from all states, not just our state, which support Israel and need assistance to get reelected. Many Israeli Americans had previously served in the IDF, and some of them believe they already paid their dues to Israel, and now it's time for the Jewish American community to do their share. Well, I believe the opposite is true. As Israeli American, we cannot serve in the IDF no more, and we cannot go to Miluim. However, here and now, as American citizens, our Miluim service is to ensure American support for the state of Israel, and the best way to do it is through AIPAC. Now, I would like to just conclude with the following statement made thousands and thousands of years ago by Hillel the Elder. Im en ani li, mi li, וכשאני רק לעצמי, מה אני? ואם לא עכשיו, אימתי? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, who am I? And if not now, when? תודה רבה לכולם. Thank you very much.